On October 21, 2025, a single missile from the U.S. Navy hit its target with killer precision, killing 2 men and leaving behind 3 survivors. This wasn't a routine drug bust or a simple arrest gone wrong. It was America unleashing its military power against the Mexican cartels. But how did a Navy destroyer end up hunting semi-submersibles with missiles instead of handcuffs? And what made this particular vessel so dangerous that it had to be destroyed at all costs? Join us as we find out what happens when the U.S. Navy plots its revenge on Mexican cartels. Eastern Pacific Ocean, international waters, roughly 1,200 nautical miles from the United States mainland. October 21, 2025. A low-profile vessel moves through the swell, hull riding inches above the water, only the cockpit and exhaust breaking the surface. It is 15 meters long, built of wood and fiberglass, and it carries 7 tons of cargo below deck. Inside, the crew works with routine discipline. No radar, no radio chatter. Navigation by GPS and compass. The cargo is multiple tons of cocaine and fentanyl, with a street value that exceeds $200 million. The route is familiar, runs from Colombia to Mexico and sometimes onward to California. Historical detection rates are low. Only 11% of such vessels are intercepted by the Coast Guard. In recent times, the situation is different. High overhead, MQ-9 Reaper drones patrol at 25,000 feet. Electro-optical and infrared sensors record engine heat and movement. Each maneuver is logged. In a command center hundreds of miles away, analysts monitor multiple feeds. Satellite imagery confirmed the semi-submersible left a concealed shipyard along the Colombian coast. Predictive models mapped a probable track. Radio intercepts identified cargo indicators. Signals converged as well as confidence rose. This is a high-value target. Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación controls the logistics node linked to this vessel. CJAR-NG coordinates precursor imports, chemical processing, consolidation of bulk loads, and distribution cells across transit states into the United States markets. The Department of State and Treasury designated CJNG under Executive Order 14157 as a foreign terrorist organization and as a specially designated global terrorist entity. That designation brings legal and financial tools to freeze assets and to criminalize material support. Intelligence shows the semi-submersible is not an isolated run. It is a node in a layered supply chain. Precursor chemicals move from overseas suppliers into Mexican ports. Labs in Sinaloa and Jalisco process those chemicals into finished fentanyl. Cocaine consolidates at inland production sites. Loads are prepared for ship-to-ship transfer, then moved north. The vessel carries consolidated products destined for distribution in Mexico and the United States. Open-source reporting and government notices corroborate the supply chain links and scale. Operationally, the high-value tag meets clear thresholds. Large narcotics volume, ties to senior logistics planners, high probability that striking the node will degrade the distribution and yield actionable intelligence. Analysts cross-check satellite imagery of the departure yard, intercepted communications referencing a large shipment, financial traces tied to known CJNG facilitators, and drone confirmation of load and hull configuration. Each source strengthened the assessment. The crew has no awareness of surveillance. Detection was layered and covert. Space-based synthetic aperture radar provided persistent cueing. Infrared sensors tracked heat signatures. Unmanned aerial systems supplied continuous visual and thermal tracking. Signals intelligence and predictive routing models filled temporal gaps. Surveillance remained non-attributable until kinetic options were finalized. The combined effect turned a small, low-profile vessel into a clearly defined strategic target. At 6:37 that morning, the Tactical Operations Center receives final authorization. Fire control coordinates lock. A nearby Arleigh Burke-class destroyer moves to position 40 nautical miles from the target. At 6:45 missile batteries, radar confirms the track, and the fire control officer verifies no civilian vessels are within the engagement area. Encrypted channels transmit the order. Weapons free. This is retaliation. The Navy responds to a cartel that declared war on fentanyl. The semi-submersible crew continues routine checks, fuel, engine temperature, and estimated arrival time, confident they are invisible. They are not. But before we see what happened next, we need to understand how America reached the point where Navy warships hunt drug traffickers with missiles instead of Coast Guard cutters with handcuffs. What turned the war on drugs into an actual war? The fentanyl crisis did not happen overnight. It grew slowly, then suddenly accelerated. In 2015, drug overdose deaths in the United States reached 52,000, mostly from heroin and prescription opioids. By 2020, the number jumped to 93,000, with fentanyl emerging as the main killer. In 2023, 107,543 Americans died from overdoses, 72,776 involving synthetic opioids, primarily illicit fentanyl. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can kill an adult. That is the weight of a few grains of sand. 1 kilogram can kill 500,000 people. The cartels ship tons. Mexican cartels industrialize the trade. Precursor chemicals arrived from China. Clandestine labs operated across Mexico. Fentanyl is pressed into counterfeit pills resembling Xanax, Percocet, and Adderall. Teenagers bought pills at parties and never woke up. Parents found their children lifeless in their rooms. Every state reported record deaths. Rural towns, major cities, affluent suburbs, no one was safe. By 2024, fentanyl became the leading cause of death for Americans aged 18 to 45, surpassing car accidents, gun violence, and suicide. Cartels profited billions. Conservative estimates placed annual Sinaloa cartel profits at $13 billion. Cartel de Jalisco, Nueva Generación, earned similar sums, controlling supply chains from Chinese chemical suppliers to street dealers nationwide. On January 20th, 2025, the President signed Executive Order 14157, creating a formal process to treat major transnational criminal groups as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. The order tied authority from the Immigration and Nationality Act and the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to a new administrative pathway for designation, and it set timelines for interagency action, law enforcement, diplomacy, treasury, and defense to implement those designations. Practically, the order carried 3 immediate legal effects. First, material support to designated groups became a federal crime under existing statutes applied to FTOs. Providing money, weapons, transportation, or services could trigger criminal liability. Second, the Treasury and Office of Foreign Assets Control could freeze and block assets, and banks worldwide were put on notice to screen and cut financial flows tied to designated entities to avoid penalties and loss of access to the United States financial system. Third, the order clarified that when designations and accompanying legal findings were made, military authorities could treat members and operatives as enemy combatants for purposes of the use of force and targeting decisions under the laws of armed conflict. These shifts expanded the tools available across departments for disrupting cartel networks. The State Department followed by designating 8 organizations as foreign terrorist organization and specially designated global terrorist, which activated interagency sanctions and enforcement measures and provided a legal basis for downstream actions. From asset blocking to criminal prosecutions to military targeting decisions were authorized. The White House and Treasury guidance emphasized coordinated implementation, with OFAC issuing sanctions guidance and departments updating procedures for investigations and prosecutions. In short, EO 14157 reframed major cartels from transnational criminals into entities subject to the same legal architecture used against foreign terrorist groups. That reframing expanded criminal exposure, financial interdiction tools, and, where legal review supported it, military options. The order did not itself authorize strikes. Rather, it created the statutory and policy groundwork that enabled subsequent designations and campaign decisions. On February 28th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced 8 cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, including Sinaloa and Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación. The legal framework reclassified them from criminals to enemy combatants. By late August, the USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group deployed to the Caribbean with Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. By October, the Navy had conducted multiple precision strikes, targeting cartel vessels. The United States was now engaged in a non-international armed conflict with cartels treated as enemy forces under military rules of engagement. The cartels had seen this coming and prepared accordingly, but their response wasn't lawyers or diplomacy, it was engineering. How do you hide a vessel carrying 7 tons of drugs from the most powerful navy on Earth? In 1988, a group of fishermen off the coast of Boca Raton, Florida, spotted something strange cutting through the water. It was small, about 6.5 meters long, with most of its body hidden beneath the surface. When the Coast Guard investigated, they realized it wasn't a regular boat at all. It was built to move underwater, a crude, handmade submarine carrying drugs. That discovery marked the birth of what would later be called the narco submarine. At the time, United States intelligence brushed it off. Officials believed it was just an isolated experiment by desperate smugglers. They were wrong. The idea had already taken root deep in Colombia's jungles. By the mid-1990s, cartels were quietly building more advanced versions, longer, faster, and harder to detect. Drug Enforcement Administration agents began picking up strange bits of information: coded radio chatter, vague reports from coastal patrols, and witness statements mentioning underwater boats. Intelligence analysts didn't buy it. They thought it was a rumor, myth, exaggeration, something drug runners made up to scare authorities. The supposed drug submarine was treated like a ghost story. They even gave it a mocking nickname, Bigfoot. Then the captures began, and Bigfoot turned out to be very real. Most narco submarines are low-profile vessels, average length 15 meters. Hulls are elongated, built from wood and fiberglass, sometimes reinforced with carbon fiber. Diesel engines, usually twin Yamaha outboards producing 350 horsepower each. Design is simple but effective. Only the cockpit, about 2 feet tall, and the exhaust pipes remain above water. Radar detection is difficult. Wave action can hide the vessel entirely. Construction takes place in hidden jungle shipyards across Colombia, Ecuador, and southern Mexico. Engineers and local labor produce vessels costing between $150,000 for basic low-pressure vessels and up to $4 million for fully submersible models. Cargo capacity, 3 to 7 tons. The largest seizure recorded was 7.7 tons of cocaine, wholesale value $200 million, street value over $500 million. One successful voyage covers the construction cost many times over. By 2009, the U.S. Joint Interagency Task Force South tracked around 60 semi-submersibles per year. From 2006 to 2017, authorities documented 214 events, disrupting only 45. Interdiction rates remain low. Most vessels reach their destination. Technology advanced. Early models ran on the surface. Later vessels could remain fully submerged. Navigation included GPS, satellite communication, encrypted radios, and autopilot systems. Crews endured cramped conditions, engine noise, and carbon monoxide risk. Pay ranged from $30,000 to $50,000 per voyage. By July 2025, the Colombian Navy intercepted an unmanned, remotely guided narco submarine, loaded with 3 tons of cocaine. The fleet was evolving, with autonomous vessels capable of global operations, including routes to Oceania. The narco submersible network was going worldwide, but the cartels made one critical miscalculation too. They assumed the ocean's vastness would protect them, that tracking a 15-meter vessel across thousands of square miles of Pacific water was impossible. How wrong could they be? October 21st, 2025, pre-dawn over the Eastern Pacific. The target vessel had departed 72 hours earlier from a hidden shipyard on the Colombian coast near the Panama border. Satellite reconnaissance had identified the facility months prior. Analysts noted construction activity and deliveries of wood, fiberglass, and marine diesel engines. Once the semi-submersible launched, U.S. Space Force tracking systems picked it up. Synthetic aperture radar satellites detected the 15-meter vessel easily. Task Force algorithms used ocean currents, weather, and historical trafficking patterns to predict the route. 3 possibilities emerged: Mexico's Pacific coast, Southern California, or international waters for ship-to-ship transfer. MQ-9 Reaper drones deployed from forward operating location Manta, Ecuador, with a 4-hour flight time and 27-hour loiter capability. The drone's electro-optical and infrared sensors tracked the vessel continuously. The crew maintained strict protocols: no radio, navigation by pre-programmed GPS, speed 8 knots, estimated 12-day voyage to Mexico. Cargo: 6.2 tons of cocaine and fentanyl, stored in watertight compartments, representing 6 months of production. By October 19th, the vessel was 800 nautical miles off Colombia, on schedule. Intelligence confirmed the cargo through intercepted communications. The strike plan moved up the chain: Joint Chiefs, National Security Council, presidential authorization, legal review confirmed rules of engagement compliance. October 21st, 6:15 in the morning. USS John Paul Jones, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, 40 nautical miles from the target, adjusted course. 6:37, fire control radar locked on, cross-checked with drone feed. 6:45, the captain gave the order. Weapons free, an RGM-84 Harpoon missile launched, Mach 0.85, 15 feet above water, terminal guidance activated. Warhead armed, 6:46:30, impact. The explosion destroyed the hull, vaporized the forward compartment. 2 crew members died instantly. The aft section broke apart. Diesel fuel and narcotics were scattered. 3 survivors clung to debris. 6:52, MH-60R Seahawk deployed. All survivors recovered within 20 minutes. 6.2 tons of narcotics sank. 2 bodies unrecovered. The survivors were flown to the destroyer, but their capture was just the beginning of an intelligence operation. What secrets did they carry about cartel operations, and how would this strike reshape the entire drug war? Aboard USS John Paul Jones, medical teams treated the survivors immediately. The man with the broken arm received a splint and pain relief. The man with ruptured eardrums was given antibiotics and hearing checks. All 3 were screened for hypothermia, dehydration, and shock. Interrogations followed. The Naval Criminal Investigative Service conducted formal interviews under standard procedures for detained enemy combatants. Interpreters explained rights. 2 survivors were Colombian nationals. One was Ecuadorian, identified as Andrés Fernando Tufino. The questioning focused on operational intelligence. Investigators asked where the drugs originated, which labs made them, who coordinated the shipment, and what the destination and Mexican contacts were. Fear and trauma slowed answers at first. Isolation aboard a warship and the knowledge that their employers abandoned them loosened tongues. Key intelligence emerged. Cocaine came from 3 production sites in Colombia. Fentanyl manufacturing traced to labs in Sinaloa and Jalisco, supplied with precursors from China. The planned destination was Acapulco for a ship-to-ship transfer to a fishing vessel. From there, smaller loads would move north. The crew was to be paid $40,000 each, half up front and half on delivery. Survivors revealed communication protocols, code words, radio channels, meeting locations, and names of mid-level coordinators. Each detail fed the task force databases. Analysts cross-referenced intercepts, financial records, and human intelligence to build a fuller picture. 4 days after the rescue on October 19, 2025, the 2 Colombian nationals were repatriated, and Tufino returned to Ecuador. Ecuadorian authorities investigated and found no prosecutable crime under domestic law. Tufino was released and gave a local interview, calling the strike murder. Legal questions persisted. Under U.S. law, material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations is a federal crime. International law remained contested. The administration maintained these were military operations against enemy combatants in an armed conflict. The Secretary of Defense framed the threat bluntly, comparing the cartels to transnational terrorists and asserting authority to act. The campaign continued. Additional strikes and expanded financial sanctions followed, raising political and legal debate at home and abroad. The strikes raised alarms about cartel operations, but this wasn't just about sinking boats. This was about fundamentally changing the rules of a war that had been fought the same way for 50 years, and the cartels were about to learn what happens when the U.S. military stops playing defense. The October 2025 strikes achieved what decades of maritime interdiction could not. They altered cartel cost-benefit analysis. Building a semi-submersible, once a reliable $200 million return on a $2 million investment, now carried a new variable: the probability of destruction by missile strike before arrival. Intelligence summaries from November showed a 40% reduction in construction activity at known narco subyards. Cartels reassessed transport methods. Some reverted to land and air corridors. Others explored transatlantic and trans-Pacific routes. None equaled the volume efficiency of the Pacific semi-submersible line. The operations demonstrated multi-domain integration. Space-based sensors delivered persistent coverage through synthetic aperture radar, infrared detection, and optical confirmation. Data flowed in real time to analysis centers, where artificial intelligence models identified vessel behavior patterns and probable trajectories. Unmanned systems maintained overhead surveillance. MQ-9 Reapers loitered for over a day. RQ-4 Global Hawks operated above 60,000 feet with extended endurance. Naval units provided kinetic options, destroyers armed with cruise missiles, carrier aircraft capable of precision strike, and submarines performing undisclosed reconnaissance roles. Each platform reinforced the others. Satellites cued drones. Drones refined targeting for surface ships. Ships relayed battle damage assessments. The system adapted continuously, producing a self-correcting intelligence loop. Cartels sought countermeasures, autonomous subs without crews, decoy hulls, and altered routes. But communication links and pattern recognition exposed vulnerabilities. Expanded satellite constellations and drone patrols negated most deception attempts. Operational metrics reflected success. 9 vessels destroyed, 40 tons of cocaine and fentanyl interdicted, and an estimated $4 billion market loss. 47 enemy personnel killed or captured. Follow-on raids in Colombia and Mexico yielded 12 additional arrests. Semi-sub construction decreased by 40%, with alternative smuggling proving less efficient. Strategic debate followed. Sustaining high-tempo operations required resources and political will. Analysts noted demand remained the primary driver. Interdiction alone could not eliminate supply. Yet the deterrence value was evident. The ocean was no longer a sanctuary. Every launch point fell under continuous surveillance. For United States forces, the mission represented a doctrinal shift. Skills intended for great power conflict applied effectively to non-state targets. The demonstration of persistent maritime awareness and precision lethality carried broader deterrent implications. The Pacific battlespace had changed. Cartel innovation would continue, but the United States had redefined the operational environment. The calculus of risk now included near-certain detection and the prospect of instant destruction. The war on drugs has entered its military phase. Cartels build while the Navy hunts. The balance remains in motion. At midnight, FA-18 Super Hornets launch from a carrier and strike a hardened Venezuelan cartel lab hidden in the hills. Precision sensors pick fleeing men, lasers paint targets, and BLU-109 bunker busters collapse the tunnels in seconds. A hideout is erased, a command node shattered, and a blunt message sent across the region. This is modern naval air power, fast, surgical, and utterly unforgiving. On August 15th, the President ordered 3 Aegis-equipped Arleigh Burke-class destroyers to steam into the southern Caribbean near Venezuela. Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, and USS Sampson. The move was described by U.S. officials as part of a push to pressure transnational criminal groups Washington has labeled threats to U.S. security and to disrupt sea routes used to move fentanyl and other drugs. USS Gravely is a Flight II Arleigh Burke destroyer built for multi-mission work. Gravely uses the Aegis Combat System, a linked set of radars and computers that track air and surface contacts and guide defensive missiles. The ship has a Mark 41 vertical launch system able to fire standard surface-to-air missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and ASROC anti-submarine rockets. It can operate 2 MH-60 helicopters from its hangar and flight deck, extending the ship's search and response reach well beyond the hull. Gravely's propulsion package, gas turbines driving 2 shafts, gives it the speed and endurance to sustain long patrols. The ship carries a crew trained in air defense, anti-submarine warfare, and boarding operations, so it can shift quickly from surveillance to action when intelligence or rules of engagement allow. Gravely's name honors Vice Admiral Samuel L. Gravely Jr., a historic figure in the U.S. Navy. The ship carries that legacy in its patches and in the way sailors talk about duty and first. That symbolic weight matters on long deployments. Names and history are part of what keeps a crew focused when watches are long and the sea is empty. Operationally, Gravely will likely be used as a high-end sensor and missile node, monitoring aircraft and surface traffic, protecting other ships in the group, and providing missile response if a high-value threat is identified. USS Jason Dunham brings similar weapons and a few public notes about recent operations. Like other Flight 2IA Arleigh Burkes, Jason Dunham has the Aegis system, VLS cells that can fire Tomahawk, Standard, and ASROC rockets, and a hangar for MH-60 helicopters. The ship is roughly 509 feet long and built to sustain long deployments, participate in carrier strike groups, and conduct independent patrols. Public Navy releases show Jason Dunham has returned from extended deployments and worked with carrier groups and allied navies, which speaks to its training and interoperability with other U.S. and partner assets. In an anti-smuggling role, Jason Dunham's helicopters and embarked visit-board search-seizure teams give it the tools to find, approach, and inspect suspicious small craft at sea. USS Sampson is a proven multi-mission destroyer with a history of deployments across the Pacific and allied exercises. Sampson's features include the Mark 41 VLS, a 5-inch gun for surface engagements, torpedo tubes for anti-submarine warfare, and advanced radar and sonar suites for detecting submarines and low-flying threats. Sampson has participated in humanitarian responses, multinational exercises, and long deployments, showing the class's flexibility. For the current patrols off Venezuela, Sampson can perform the same layered tasks as the other two ships: long-range detection, helicopter sorties for scouting and interdiction, close-in naval gunfire if directed, and anti-submarine searches where intelligence suggests subs or narco-subs might be present. Taken together, these three destroyers create overlapping capabilities. Aegis radars on one ship share tracks with the others. Helicopters from any of the ships fly to investigate contacts, and boarding teams move from ship to small boats for inspections. The combination of long-range missiles, anti-submarine weapons, and aviation gives commanders options. Deter suspicious movement with presence, intercept and board small craft, or use missiles if ordered under strict rules of engagement. On board each destroyer, watches and drills replace headlines. Sailors monitor radar and sonar screens, check engine rooms, and run aviation operations. Helicopter crews plan flight lines to sweep shipping lanes for low, fast boats or suspicious loads. Boarding teams rehearse night approaches and searches so they can move quickly and safely when ordered to stop and inspect a vessel. The ship's legal and intelligence officers review evidence and liaise with regional partners so any interdiction fits international law and the mission's rules. Those routines are low drama but high stakes. The ships must avoid incidents that would widen a political clash while still pursuing smugglers who change tactics fast. The Venezuelan government framed the deployment as a violation of sovereignty and mere threats. They must have forgotten a recent encounter when 12 FA-18 Super Hornets slid off the carrier deck into a Black Sea sky. They left in silence, a tight arrow of metal and fuel, each jet carrying the weight of a single clear order. Take away the enemy's safe place. The target lay deep in the Golis Mountains, a cave network cut into stone and sealed with concrete. Inside, planners believed, a militant cell had set up a hardened base and stored weapons for future attacks. The choice of the Super Hornet was careful, not flashy. The F-35 brings stealth and sensors. Tomahawks fly far without a pilot, but the mission needed jets that could carry big, heavy weapons, stay in the air long enough to find their marks, and adjust in flight if things change. Each Super Hornet could bear up to 17,750 pounds of external stores. That room for weight meant the pilots could load bunker busters and guidance gear and still have fuel and sensors to spare. The airplanes were the muscle and the brain at once. On the carrier, the deck crew moved like a single machine. The flight deck was a blur of lights and shouted calls, but that noise stopped the moment the jets pushed into the night. Pilots ran final checks, tuned radios to a silent frequency, and locked weapon systems to the mission profile. They would keep strict radio silence now. Surprise was the real armor. The BLU-109 was the centerpiece. This is not a bomb that makes a big surface blast and a lot of smoke. It is a tool built to burrow. A hardened steel case drives it through concrete and packed earth. Inside is a 535-pound explosive heart, and a programmable fuse sets how long the bomb waits before it goes off. The math matters. Penetrate, pause, detonate, collapse from within. The designers meant it to break through up to 8 feet of reinforced concrete or a couple of 100 feet of dense ground, enough to reach the bones of a bunker and make them fail. The plan split the squadron into 4 groups. Each pair of jets took an entrance to the cave system. Ground spotters had painted tiny points of light with lasers, invisible to all but the bombs and the pilots who trusted them. Flying low to stay under the radar, the Hornets kept tight formation until the last moment. Then, at about 4,200 feet, the first 2 rolled in together and dove. From inside the cockpit, it was all speed and focus. The ground rose fast. The HUD glowed green numbers and markers. Pilots watched their flight path, the bomb's seeker locks, and the laser paint that told the warhead where to aim. Release points arrived on a wire of data and training. The bombs left the wings and began the silent arc into the mountain. There were no fireworks to announce the strike. From the air, you might have thought the missiles disappeared into stone. Then, not minutes later, but seconds, the mountain answered. Deep detonations sent internal pressure waves through dark tunnels. Stored munitions inside the caves ignited and added their fury to the first blast. The effect was not a surface crater, but an internal shudder and collapse. Supports snapped, corridors fell in, the safe rooms filled with rubble. This was the point. Conventional bombs conceal an entrance. They can leave a mouth that looks closed, but caves can hide and survive. The BLU-109 struck where the enemy thought they were safest, inside. When the chambers went, the mountain itself became a gravestone for the base. Back on the carrier, mission planners watched feeds and read sensors. Heat signatures, seismic blips, and secondary explosions streamed across screens. The first wave climbed away and formed up. Some crews swung back to check for remaining targets. Others circled to watch for movement. The plan always left room for a second phase, follow-up strikes to finish what the first pass had started, or to hit emergent threats that showed themselves once the dust settled. What the strike did best was deny sanctuary. The cave network had been a place to hide, store, and plan. After the blast, the pathways that let militants move and resupply were gone or too dangerous to use. The mission did not seek only bodies, it aimed to remove the place itself as an option. The war in the dark is a war of rooms and routes. Take the rooms away, and the routes collapse. Precision mattered at every step. The BLU-109 needed a precise hit to reach the pocket of space it would destroy. Lasers from ground teams, special operators who risked being close enough to paint targets, had to be steady and true. Pilots had to time their dives perfectly. The bomb's programmable fuses had to count their fractions of seconds and detonate at the depth that would cause the most structural failure. One mistimed moment, one misread guide beam, could mean the difference between collapse and a wasted strike. When the first wave climbed to safer air, they watched the results. Secondary fires flared and then died. Smoke climbed in thin columns. The mountain's face bore new cracks and scars, but that was not the real measure. The caves, the chambers, the storage pits, they were no longer serviceable. Men who had planned on hiding there would find no practical shelter. Tools and weapons could be buried or destroyed. Plans could be erased. The strike showed another lesson. A small number of aircraft, with the right weapons and accurate intelligence, can do the work that once needed entire campaigns. Years ago, hitting a mountain hideout might have required days of bombing, long runs of ordnance, or a ground assault that risked many lives. Here, a dozen jets in one synchronized hour reached deep, struck hard, and left the terrain unusable. That precision reduces collateral damage and concentrates force where it counts. The operation did not end with the explosions. After the smoke thinned, teams moved in to assess. Sensors told them the major chambers had collapsed. If any militants had survived, escape routes would be narrow and tracked. If any weapons or intelligence caches remained partially intact, follow-up teams would find what the strikes had exposed. The strike's success was both physical and informational. The blast removed shelter, and it revealed what the enemy had hidden. Still, the battlefield kept speaking. Secondary explosions had thrown debris and caused local shifts in the mountain. The aftershocks mattered. The planning staff knew that war has quiet echoes. Caves that seemed dead might hide small pockets where survivors cling to life. Slow, methodical searches would follow, but the initial goal, deny the enemy a safe base, had been achieved. This sort of strike is not about spectacle. They broke the action into a single pulse. Find, fix, strike, and finish. All inside 5 minutes. It began with a flicker on a screen and ended with a chain of command that no longer worked. The AN/ASQ-228, Advanced Targeting FLIR under one Super Hornet, did the seeing. It turned dark rock and shadow into bright shapes and moving heat. It picked out 12 fighters trying to slip through a narrow crevice where no human eye could reach. In a moment, those men were no longer hidden. They were targets. The sensor did more than show heat. Its software separated weapon profiles from bodies, traced motion through brush, and fed exact coordinates into the jet systems. The laser designator on the pod painted tiny invisible dots on each figure. Weapons officers in the backseater and crews on other jets watched those dots appear on their screens. The network stitched those feeds together. One jet could track, another could confirm, and a third could release a bomb, all without a single person on the ground calling the shot. When the command came, the pilots did not chatter. They flew in tight rhythm, eyes on the instruments. The Super Hornet carried both the sensor and the weapons needed to make the strike count. They did not drop dumb bombs. They mapped each target with laser precision and timed each delivery so the blast hit at a depth calculated to collapse the caves from the inside. The BLU-109s were the right tool for that job. Heavy, hard-cased, built to dig through concrete and packed earth and then detonate where it hurt most. What made the kill chain fast was the way the systems linked together. Data moved as if there were no distance between aircraft. Target tracks updated in real time. The weapons crews saw the same picture that the sensor saw. Identification, targeting, and firing happened as a single flow. That flow closed the gap between detection and destruction. By the time the enemy realized they were exposed, there was no time to run. The strike hit near simultaneously across the crevice. The bombs went in, and the mountain spoke from inside. There were no showy crashes on the face of the cliff. The effect was internal. Tunnels bowed and supports failed. Pressure waves rolled through chambers and ignited ammo the fighters had stockpiled. Pieces of the network collapsed into powder and wreckage. Men who had planned an escape found their exits blocked by fallen stone. The result was immediate and strategic. The enemy's chain of command fractured as leaders and messengers were cut off, buried, or scattered. Orders stopped flowing. Units that had depended on a central base found themselves isolated and blind. The operation did more than destroy fighters. It broke the system they used to coordinate attacks. In war, ruining a single node can create ripple effects that spread faster than any reinforcements. This outcome was not an accident. It came from rehearsal, training, and a shared doctrine. Sensors and shooters must think as one. Pilots trained for common movements. Weapons officers learned to read the images the same way. Mission planners rehearsed the handoffs until the most complex actions felt like muscle memory. With that discipline, the whole machine could move as one thought, shaving minutes off a process that used to take hours or days. Technology made that thought possible, but people made it real. Pilots watched the images and verified what the system suggested. Weapons officers ran the math and set fuses to the exact millisecond. The carrier strike group's command staff stayed 2 steps ahead, ready to shift targets, order a second pass, or abort if civilians appeared. Each role mattered. A single mistake could waste a strike, or worse, carry consequences for innocent people. That margin for error forced calm and precision at every level. The system also changed how commanders judge risk. With a standoff sensor like the AN/ASQ-228, jets could stay well beyond the reach of most shoulder-fired threats. That distance let them run longer, watch harder, and fire from positions that kept pilots out of immediate danger. Yet safety did not mean sloppiness. The reliance on sensors required perfect discipline on the ground teams who lasered targets, and ruthless care from pilots who had to trust the data. What happened next showed the flexibility that made the strike decisive. Heat signatures revealed movement in a side tunnel. Rather than head back to the carrier and wait for a new plan, some Super Hornets called for fuel. Mid-air refueling kept them on station. They topped off from tankers, synced with the rest of the group, and executed a second targeted strike minutes after the first. The ability to refuel and re-engage without returning to base turned a single raid into a sustained pressure campaign in real time. That loop, detect, strike, refuel, strike again, kept the enemy from reforming. Where once a force might withdraw, regroup, and reappear a day later, these fighters could unspool the enemy's options in hours. The faster tempo let Allied commanders protect future forces by removing imminent threats before they could move or call for backup. Beyond the bombs and the sensors, the strike was a study in timing. Laser designators needed steady hands. Fuses needed correct programming. The AN/ASQ-228's resolution was critical. It did not simply say, "There's someone there." It showed posture, weight, and movement. That detail converted probable threats into confirmed targets. It lowered the fog of war, making decisions clearer and the use of force more surgical. There was also a moral element. The system's precision reduced the need to send in ground teams into ambushes. It cut the number of people who would have to walk into a trap to confirm the enemy's presence. Saving those lives was part of the calculus. In this strike, the technology protected both attacking crews and special forces who might otherwise have to do the dangerous close work. After the bursts of fire, teams sifted through the data, sensors replayed the event frame by frame, analysts parsed signatures to determine what had been destroyed and what might still be salvageable. Seismic sensors and infrared scans told planners where chambers had collapsed and where heat still pulsed. This after-action feed fed prosecution, intelligence, and future planning. The strike was not an end. It was a source of fresh, usable information. The effect on the enemy was simple: no safe place. They could not rely on caves, bunkers, or buried depots if a sensor from the sky could find a narrow crevice and seed it for collapse. The loss of sanctuary forced them into movement or dispersion, both of which made them easier to track through communications and funds. The psychological shock of seeing a base erased in minutes also spread doubt among survivors, undermining morale and loyalty. The message behind the raid is simple and loud. A carrier and its fighters can reach anywhere, at any time, without asking for permission or waiting for a local base. That mobility changes the map. Where mountains and deserts once felt safe, they now face a sky that sees and a sea that moves. A carrier strike group is no longer only a show of force. It is a strike force, mobile, fast, and able to act alone if needed. In the mountains, removing a leader in his inner circle does more than kill or capture people. It breaks networks. Orders stop moving. Plans collapse. When a command node vanishes, the rest of the group splinters into confusion and fear. That ripple effect protects troops who might move in later. It also buys time for diplomats and law enforcement to act. The mission becomes more than a single hit. It becomes a way to reshape how an enemy fights. The tools that make that possible are not magical. They are aircraft, sensors, weapons, and sailors and pilots who know how to use them together. The AN/ASQ-228F LIR pod turns night into a clear picture. It sees heat and movement through smoke, dust, and brush. It tells you in plain lines where a person stands, who carries a weapon, and which path someone is using to flee. That picture lets pilots mark targets and commanders decide in seconds. Flight deck crews and pilots call the Super Hornet the Rhino because it grew into the role. Bigger, tougher, and more lethal than its predecessors. It is not just a jet for dogfights, it is a flying toolbox. It can carry heavy bombs like the BLU-109 and still have range and agility. It can patrol for hours and then dive for a target the same night. That blend of power and endurance matters when targets hide under rocks and behind trees. Those twin Pratt & Whitney engines give the Rhino thrust. They push the jet fast enough to cross miles of air and to escape danger. The shape of the jet, swept wings, and leading-edge extensions keeps it nimble when a pilot needs to turn tight or dodge threats. But raw speed and maneuverability are only half the story. The Hornet's real strength is its systems: radar, targeting pods, and onboard computers that stitch all the battlefield data into one picture. A strike like the mountain raid is a chain. The sensor sees. The pilot confirms. The weapons officer programs the fuse. The bomb drops. The mountain falls. Each link must work, and each person must trust the other. The AN/ASQ-228 gives the first link the edge. It finds people where no one thought to look. From tens of miles away, it points like a finger. The Hornet closes, keeps quiet, and delivers the punch that ends the group's ability to use that place again. Carriers make that process repeatable. A carrier at sea carries not just jets, but tankers, sensors, and crews for days, weeks, or months. If a strike reveals new targets, jets refuel and go again. If the job needs more firepower, the carrier can launch more sorties. That ability to refuel and re-engage keeps pressure on any force that thought running into the hills would save them. This kind of power changes how wars start and how they end. In the past, hitting a fortress might have required a long planning cycle, local permission, and a ground force to clear the wreckage. Now, a carrier can act on its own intelligence and strike within hours. That speed closes the door on escape. It also reduces the need for massed forces on the ground, lowering the risk for soldiers who would have to clear a hardened site by hand. But speed and reach do not mean rough tactics. Precision is the aim. The BLU-109 is a tool designed to break what hides under the earth and concrete. It does not leave a wide blast zone. It goes in deep and detonates, where it will collapse internal chambers. That limits surface damage and focuses destruction where it matters. Combined with the targeting pod's ability to single out people in movement, the result is a strike that ends a base without flattening an entire mountain or village. There is also a legal and political edge to naval air power. Acting from the sea avoids the need for host nation bases. That can matter in places where local politics are fragile or where asking permission would slow action to the point of uselessness. A carrier off the coast holds options: to act, to wait, or to withdraw, all while staying technically independent. For commanders, that freedom is valuable. It lets them respond to threats fast without becoming entangled in local disputes. Technology also speeds the decision loop. Real-time data flows up from the pod to the jet to the carrier and to command centers ashore. That flow means a new picture can create a new plan in minutes. A fleeing group spotted in a crevice can be marked, struck, and finished before it finds another hiding place. The tempo of war increases. The enemy's window to adapt shrinks. Finally, there is the human side. Sailors on a carrier, pilots in cockpits, and ground crews on the deck all accept risk to keep the system running. They also know their actions have consequences beyond the immediate blast. Taking out a mountain base can save future lives, of soldiers, of civilians, of aid workers. But it can also harden attitudes and push fighters to new tactics. That is why follow-through matters. Arrests, prosecutions, and efforts to cut off finances and safe havens after a strike. In early 2025, the Coast Guard cutter James seized nearly $500 million in drugs during a single 112-day mission. This 418-foot vessel operates like a floating military base, working around the clock to hunt drug smugglers. But how does one ship track submarines specifically designed to be invisible? And why would cartels spend millions building vessels that might end up at the bottom of the ocean? Join us as we look into how the United States military sabotaged drug submarine operations at sea. The cartels have changed how they move drugs. They no longer use fast boats racing on water. Now they use homemade submarines that travel underwater. These submarines can go thousands of miles under the sea and can carry drugs worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Colombian drug groups tried using basic underwater tubes pulled by fishing boats. These simple devices were often caught by military patrols, so they learned and got better. By the 1990s, they were building powered submarines in secret places deep in the jungle. Trees hid these workshops from planes and satellites. These submarines were built from homemade boats with everyday materials like fiberglass and wood. Workers learned how to build them through trial and error. The jungle workshops became their factories where the cartel showed they could match technology with hard work and drug money. Today's drug submarines show the building skills despite being made by people who never studied submarine design. These boats are about 80 feet long and can carry up to 10 tons of drugs across 2,500 miles of ocean without more fuel. The submarines stay mostly underwater, only coming up briefly at night for fresh air. This helps them avoid Coast Guard and Navy ships looking on the water's surface. Each sub has 5 crew members who spend weeks at sea in very hard conditions. The space is so small that they can barely stand up. It gets very hot inside, and the crew members eat little food and drink little water. Aside from this, the air is stale, and the workers often describe the experience as being stuck in a hot, damp closet. Their makeshift submarines work so well that they have become the main way to move large drug shipments across oceans. Law officers find it hard to keep up as the designs and routes keep changing. Military forces have caught some of them and learned their secrets, but for each one they catch, several more finish their trips and deliver drugs to waiting buyers. The cartels spend between $1 and $2 million to build each submarine, which sounds like a fortune until people realize that a single successful trip can deliver drugs worth over $150 million. The math makes sense for traffickers who see these vessels as investments that pay off 75 times over, even though getting caught means decades in prison and the loss of everything they have built. These newer submarines blend into the ocean with blue and gray paint jobs that match the water around them, and their smooth shapes cut through waves without creating the white foam trails that patrol boats look for. The most sophisticated models even have lead lining installed inside their hulls, which blocks the heat from engines and crew members, so thermal cameras on military aircraft and drones can't pick up their heat signatures from above. The biggest problem for law enforcement comes from the built-in self-destruct system, which includes valves that flood the vessel and sink it within minutes when crews face capture. When patrol boats get too close, the crew opens these valves and the submarine fills with water and drops straight to the ocean floor, taking millions of dollars in drugs with it. The ocean depths where these submarines sink can reach thousands of feet, and finding them becomes like searching for a single car at the bottom of a lake the size of Texas. Recovery teams rarely find these sunken submarines, which means the evidence disappears forever along with any chance of tracking where the drugs came from. Operation Orion in 2024 shocked military officials when they intercepted a submarine that had traveled over 10,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean, heading for Australia. This submarine had covered a distance equal to driving from New York to Los Angeles more than 3 times without stopping, proving that cartels could now reach markets on the opposite side of the planet. The operation changed everything because it showed that drug submarines weren't just moving along familiar coastlines anymore, but opening new routes that law enforcement had never imagined possible. Military forces realized that any coastline in the world could become a destination for these underwater smugglers. The fight between cartels and military forces has become a fight where each side tries to outsmart the other with better equipment and smarter tactics. Law enforcement now uses thermal cameras that detect tiny temperature changes in the water, drones that patrol hundreds of square miles of ocean, and artificial intelligence that analyzes wave patterns to spot hidden submarines. These detection systems work like security cameras that can pick out one suspicious person in a stadium full of thousands of people, but they still miss most submarines crossing the ocean. Military experts admit they only catch about 1 submarine for every 3 or 4 that complete their trip successfully, which means billions of dollars in drugs reach American streets despite all the technology trying to stop them. The problem grew too big for America to handle alone, so 14 countries came together in January 2012 to launch Operation Martillo, which means hammer in Spanish. Countries including the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Guatemala, and Honduras created the biggest joint effort ever to stop drug trafficking at sea. Smugglers who tried switching routes after hearing about drug busts often sailed right into another country's patrol zone without knowing it, and the international cooperation meant there was nowhere left to hide. Every arrested crew member and seized submarine revealed more information about how trafficking networks operated, making cocaine harder to find and more expensive on American streets. Cartels responded by building a fleet that rivals some small countries' naval forces, using two main types of vessels that each serve different purposes. Their speedboats, called go-fasts, are 30 feet long and powered by 3 or 4 outboard motors that each produce 250 horsepower, like attaching several sports car engines to one small boat. These boats reach speeds over 80 miles per hour and carry 2,000 gallons of fuel, enough to travel 500 miles without stopping, which gets them from Colombia to Jamaica or from the Bahamas to Florida. The boats sit low in the water and are painted blue to blend with the ocean, usually carrying just one person to leave more room for drugs and fuel. In early 2025, one Coast Guard ship caused so much damage to cartel operations that traffickers still talk about it secretly. The United States Coast Guard cutter James completed a 112-day mission that cost trafficking groups nearly $500 million and threw their entire system into chaos. This 418-foot Legend-class cutter works like a floating military base with 150 crew members working around the clock to hunt drug smugglers. The ship can stay at sea for months without docking, following trafficking routes across the ocean without giving smugglers any chance to rest or regroup. During those 4 months, the Endurance Patrol vessel captured more than 48,000 pounds of illegal drugs, enough to supply a mid-sized American city for an entire year. The total street value reached $510 million, making it one of the biggest financial hits ever dealt to drug cartels in a single mission. On January 5th, the crew used a special drone that can fly for 18 hours straight and has cameras powerful enough to read a boat's signature from miles away. The drone followed a suspicious vessel near Ecuador until a boarding team moved in and caught 3 smugglers with 2,250 pounds of cocaine. The next day got even worse for traffickers when patrol aircraft spotted 3 go-fast boats traveling together, which smugglers rarely do because it attracts attention. Helicopter teams stopped all 3 boats at once, catching 9 people and seizing 14,000 pounds of cocaine in one coordinated strike. When smugglers tried using a low-profile boat designed to avoid radar on January 7th, Coast Guard snipers shot out the engines without hurting anyone and stopped another 8,000 pounds of cocaine. On January 18th, smugglers threw their cargo overboard to escape, but the cutter James' crew chased the fleeing boat while other members collected the floating packages, recovering 6,000 pounds of cocaine from the water. In Key West, Florida, there's a building that looks completely ordinary from the outside, but houses one of the most powerful drug-fighting operations in the world. The Interagency Task Force South brings together experts from the military, FBI, CIA, Coast Guard, and Customs to coordinate America's war on drugs at sea. Inside the command center, giant screens show maps of the Caribbean and Pacific Oceans, with colored dots marking every boat, plane, and submarine in real time. Analysts watch these screens 24 hours a day, looking for anything suspicious that might indicate drug smuggling. When they spot something unusual, they immediately send out ships, planes, or helicopters that are already positioned and ready to intercept. The task force uses special Coast Guard teams called law enforcement detachments placed on Navy warships, which solves a legal problem since military crews can't arrest civilians, but Coast Guard officers can. Navy ships, such as the USS Gridley, use powerful radar that detects small boats from over 100 miles away, while Coast Guard teams undertake the hazardous task of boarding suspicious vessels and making arrests. The command center utilizes years of data and advanced computers to predict where smugglers will next, creating heat maps that indicate the most likely routes, allowing forces to be positioned before smugglers even depart South America. The United States cutter carries technology that smugglers can't beat, including drones that stay in the air for 18 hours and have cameras that can read numbers on a boat from 5 miles away. The radar on the patrol vessel picks up objects as small as a basketball from 20 miles away, which means even a tiny periscope from a drug submarine shows up on the operator's screens. The crew includes helicopter pilots who fly low over the water, snipers who can shoot out a boat's engine without hurting anyone, and boarding teams who jump onto moving boats in rough seas. Drug submarines are hard to find because they travel just below the surface with only a small pipe sticking up for air, and they're painted blue-gray to match the ocean. The patrol vessel uses several methods at once to find these hidden vessels, starting with radar operators who watch their screens for anything that looks out of place. When they spot something suspicious, like a small object moving in a straight line where no boat should be, they mark its location and start tracking it. The crew then launches a Scan Eagle drone that flies to the target area while staying high enough that people below can't see or hear it. The drone has special cameras that see heat, and submarine engines give off heat that shows up like a bright line in the cold ocean water. Even when the submarine is completely underwater, the warm water from its exhaust creates a trail that the drone can follow, and the submarine crew never knows they're being watched from above. On January 7, 2025, the United States patrol vessel tracked one of these submarines for 8 hours before making its move. The submarine was a low-profile vessel designed to sit so close to the water that waves washed over it constantly, making it almost invisible to regular patrols. The drone followed it all day, sending video back to the ship, where analysts figured out its speed and direction, and when the submarine came up for air that night, the ship was waiting just over the horizon. When this patrol ship finds a drug submarine, catching it becomes dangerous because the crews on these narco submarines will do anything to avoid prison. They usually install special valves that flood the vessel in minutes, and when submarine crews see the Coast Guard coming, they would open these valves and sink their ships along with millions of dollars in drugs. The United States ship has to move fast, sending helicopters ahead while it races to catch up. The helicopters fly in low with snipers ready to shoot out the submarine's engines if it tries to run, while speakers tell the crew to stop in Spanish and English. Most submarine crews give up when they see helicopters overhead and a warship coming at them. On January 18th, one submarine crew threw packages of cocaine overboard while trying to escape, but the patrol vessel sent fast boats to collect the floating drugs, while other boats chased the submarine until its crew finally surrendered. The boarding teams wear special gear and carry weapons, but their main job is to get on the submarine fast and secure the valves before anyone can sink it. They climb onto wet, slippery decks while the narcotic submarine rocks in the waves, and they have to search cramped spaces where desperate smugglers might be hiding. Inside these submarines, the temperature often reaches over 100 degrees, and the air smells like diesel fuel and sweat from crews who have been at sea for weeks. The cutter James did something amazing in just 1 month. It destroyed drug operations that took criminals years to set up. The drug smugglers could not understand how one ship kept catching them. On January 5th, the ship caught a boat carrying over 2,200 pounds of cocaine near Ecuador. They found it by following it with a drone for hours. The next day, they stopped 3 fast boats traveling together and took 14,000 pounds of cocaine. This was strange because drug smugglers usually don't travel in groups. On January 7th, they caught a small submarine with 8,000 pounds of drugs. On January 18th, they recovered 6,000 pounds of drugs that smugglers had thrown into the water. The ship didn't just take drugs off the water, but also gathered information that helped catch more smugglers later. Every person they arrested knew something about the operation, like where submarines get built, who pays for them, and what routes they plan to use next. The computers and phones found on these vessels contained contacts, maps, and messages that revealed entire smuggling networks. The success hit the Sinaloa and Jalisco new generation cartels especially hard because they lost submarines that cost millions to build and took months to prepare. The cartels keep improving their submarines to avoid ships like the James cutter, adding lead lining to block heat signatures and using new materials that don't show up on radar. Some new submarines can dive deeper and stay underwater longer, while others are built to look like fishing boats on the surface, but have hidden compartments underneath. The smugglers started using encrypted radios that change frequencies every few seconds, making it impossible for the Coast Guard to listen to their conversations. The James cutter responds with new technology of its own, including artificial intelligence that analyzes wave patterns to spot submarines and satellites that track vessels from space. The ship now works with Navy submarines that can follow drug subs underwater, where surface ships can't go, and new drones can drop sonar buoys that listen for submarine engines. The Coast Guard also started using special boats that can match the speed of go-fast boats, which can reach 80 miles per hour on calm seas. When the James cutter catches a submarine, the real work begins because the crew has to document everything for court cases that might take years. They photograph every part of the submarine, weigh and test all the drugs, and interview everyone on board through translators. The submarines get towed to port, where experts take them apart to learn how they were built and look for new features that might show up on future vessels. The cocaine gets destroyed in special incinerators while prosecutors build cases against the smugglers and anyone who helped them. The crew members from drug submarines usually face 10 to 20 years in federal prison, but they're often just hired hands who know little about the overall operation. The submarine builders and cartel leaders stay hidden in South America, already working on the next submarine, while the James cutter heads back to sea. For every submarine the ship catches, experts believe 3 or 4 others complete their trip successfully, which means the hunt never really ends. The vessel proved that one ship with the right technology and crew can disrupt billion-dollar criminal operations, but it also showed how far cartels will go to move drugs across the ocean. While the ship's 112-day mission in 2025 was a massive success, everyone knows that cartels are already planning their response, building better submarines and finding new routes. The cutter James keeps hunting because stopping even one submarine means keeping tons of drugs off American streets, and that makes every dangerous boarding and long day at sea worth it. As drug cartels continue to build more sophisticated submarines, the Coast Guard and military forces keep developing better ways to find them. While the James's cutter's 112-day mission in 2025 dealt a massive blow worth $500 million, everyone knows that cartels are already planning their response, building better submarines and finding new routes. One shot changed everything. It wasn't luck or chance. It was the deadly precision of the GAU-21, a weapon built for moments just like this. In a high-stakes chase against a Venezuelan cartel drug boat, that single burst of fire turned the tide. What looked like an impossible escape quickly became a lesson in training and power. But how can one weapon carry so much power? And what really happened in those final seconds on the water? Join us as we break down the shot that stunned the cartel and made history. The war against drug cartels has now taken a much darker turn. President Donald Trump recently announced that United States military forces carried out a second strike against violent drug cartels and narco-terrorist groups in the region overseen by Southcom. He described the operation as a kinetic strike, a term used by the military to mean an attack that delivers physical force, often through missiles or bombs. Trump claimed that 3 men, whom he called terrorists, were killed in the latest operation. This was not the first time the president highlighted such actions. Earlier in September, he shared a similar video clip of another boat being destroyed. According to him, that attack targeted members of the Tren de Aragua, a group Washington identified as a foreign terrorist organization. Trump claimed that 11 people were killed in that strike, which he said included no harm to U.S. forces. He also alleged that Tren de Aragua operates under the influence of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. For military observers, these strikes point out the growing overlap between counter-narcotics missions and broader geopolitical struggles. If the U.S. evidence is accurate, the operations show a determination to treat drug cartels as not just criminals, but as threats to national security on the same level as terror groups. Yet without proof, critics argue that such actions risk escalating conflict and pulling Washington into deeper confrontation with Venezuela. Most people have also wondered what was actually used to carry out the strike. The video only shows an explosion, without revealing the platform or weapon involved. Speculation in military circles has pointed to the GAU-21, a heavy machine gun often mounted on helicopters and naval craft, capable of unleashing an intense rate of fire against small boats. An earlier attack against Houthi forces showed just how devastating the weapon could be in action. During said encounter, the crew of a Navy helicopter on routine patrol had no idea they were about to make history. For a while, the Houthi forces had been striking ships in the region with drones, rockets, and explosive boats. That morning, a quiet sweep became a tense intercept. About a quarter of an hour into the sortie, the radar operator spotted something new on the scope. The ANSP 153 units registered a small contact at bearing 045. The return was faint, too small for a jet, too low for a conventional helicopter. The tactical watch tightened immediately. The helicopter's FLIR sensor, an AAS-44 infrared turret, powered up. Infrared optics read heat, able to spot tiny temperature differences at long range. In clear conditions, the sensor could see targets out to 14 nautical miles, about 16 statute miles or 25 kilometers. But the sun had already warmed the horizon, washing out thermal contrast. The screen offered only ghostly traces. The pilot altered height to angle the sensors. A faint thermal smear eventually winked into being. The shipboard radio then used the code word vampire, Navy shorthand signaling an inbound aerial threat, most likely an unmanned craft. The helicopter peeled off to place itself between the contact and the nearby destroyer, giving the ship an added layer of protection. The sensor track flickered. The FLIR struggled to hold a steady lock because the target's signature kept vanishing into the background heat. Radar was switched from surface search to air-to-air mode to sharpen detection of small aerial threats like loitering drones or cruise missiles. Sea clutter cleared and the contact brightened on the scope. The object began tiny, jittery maneuvers, micro-moves pilots known as classic unmanned attack behavior. The IFF system identifies friend or foe, pinged for a transponder reply and got nothing. No civilian signal, no military code. That silence meant the aircraft was hostile until proven otherwise. The speed readout climbed. The drone was closing fast on the ship. Visual identification finally came through the optics. A slim fuselage, swept wings, and a pointed nose told the crew what the instruments had only hinted at. A Samad 3 class strike drone, a model previously used in maritime attacks. Intelligence had linked that design to earlier Houthi raids. The intent was clear. The unmanned aircraft carried a warhead and was committed to the ship's path. The helicopter relayed a discreet, formal request to the destroyer. Hostile contact confirmed, request permission to engage. Rules of engagement in maritime air defense require clear authority before weapons are fired to avoid fratricide or civilian harm. The destroyer returned permission at once. Distance collapsed. The drone had roughly 18 seconds of flight time remaining before impact. The crew had to act in a heartbeat. The pilot banked hard. The helicopter dove into a defensive turn, presenting the gunners with the best firing angle. The door-mounted machine gun was readied, a kinetic direct-fire weapon that expends belts of ammunition at high rate to shred incoming airframes. This engagement became a notable one because the attack helicopter, not a shipboard missile battery, had stopped the threat with machine gun rounds. The choice showed the practical need. The drone was small, low and closing fast. Conditions where gimbaled guns, guided by the helicopter's sensors and human marksmanship, can be more effective and faster than vectored missiles. From detection to decision, the timeline was compressed into seconds. The radar pick, the thermal ghost on the screen, the IFF silence, the visual ID, the rules of engagement call, and the ordering of fire, each link mattered. When the gunners opened up, their fire had to be precise enough to break the drone's control surfaces or detonate its payload at a safe distance. The engagement that followed was a clear example of layered maritime defense. Ship and air assets working together, sensors fusing data, humans making split-second judgments, and legacy weapons doing the finishing work. In that brief high-pressure moment, the helicopter crew turned warning lights and quiet radar pips into a solved problem, and into a new chapter in naval aviation tactics. The Seahawk helicopter held steady in the air, positioned between the destroyer and the incoming threat. The door gunner pressed against the fuselage, gripping the handles of the GAU-21 machine gun. His knuckles turned white, but his aim remained firm. Through the optical sight, the target came into view. No longer just a radar blip, it was now a real object, a hostile drone closing fast. The pilot fought crosswinds, keeping the helicopter stable. The drone was just half a mile away, the maximum range of the machine gun. There was no time to move closer. This was their one chance. The gunner steadied his breathing and squeezed the trigger. The GAU-21 roared, firing a burst of tracer rounds that streaked across the sky like burning lines. The first volley missed. The operator shouted corrections, and the pilot nudged the Seahawk forward. The airframe rattled, but held steady as the gunner fired again. This time, The heavy rounds tore through the air at nearly 900 meters per second, ripping into the drone's fuselage and wing. The hit was direct. The enemy aircraft jolted violently, smoke pouring from its frame as its left wing sheared away. It spiraled out of control. The gunner fired another burst to make sure. The SAM-3 drone disintegrated mid-air. The pilot's calm report followed. Target destroyed. But the relief was short-lived. New signals flickered onto the radar screen. The Seahawk's electronic warfare suite picked up a suspicious control signal in the S-band, a frequency often used to guide drones. The crew couldn't yet see anything, but the signs were clear. Another attack could already be on its way. Before they could confirm, a piercing alarm filled the cockpit. This wasn't a drone, it was a missile. The threat warning showed it had been launched from the shoreline, moving at more than 2,500 feet per second, over twice the speed of sound. Time to impact, under 8 seconds. The pilot reacted instantly. He yanked the Seahawk into a hard right turn and dropped altitude fast, forcing the missile to adjust its flight path. The crew were slammed against their harnesses as the helicopter shook under the strain. At the same time, the co-pilot activated the countermeasure system. Flares erupted from the Seahawk's sides, blinding fireballs trailing behind, each burning hotter than 2,000 degrees Celsius. The missile bore down, but then abruptly veered away, its sensors tricked by the searing heat. A flash lit the sky as it exploded against one of the flares. The shock wave rattled the helicopter, but it remained in the fight. Even then, the danger wasn't over. Radar detected a small surface contact near the shoreline where the missile had been launched. It was likely a fast boat modified into a mobile firing platform. The Seahawk relayed the data to the USS Gravely before pulling back, keeping visual watch but staying beyond the reach of shoulder-fired weapons. The GAU-21 and other weapons had long proven their brutal force on the battlefield. But in Washington, the debate was shifting. Officials once considered taking American firepower in a different direction, using drones not against terrorists in the Middle East, but against drug cartels in Mexico this time around. The proposal, discussed during the Trump administration, aimed to strike at the heart of the violent organizations that funnel narcotics across the southern border into the United States. 6 people with experience in U.S. military, law enforcement, and intelligence circles confirmed that conversations took place at high levels of government. At the center of those talks was whether armed drones, normally associated with battlefields in Afghanistan, Iraq, or Somalia, could be deployed against cartel operatives, their vehicles, or even storage sites inside Mexican territory. For Washington, the urgency was clear. Cartels were no longer seen as merely criminal organizations. They were increasingly labeled a threat to national security. Their growing role in smuggling fentanyl and methamphetamine into American communities pushed the issue higher on the administration's agenda. Yet the plan carried enormous risks, both diplomatically and politically. The discussions considered 2 main paths. The first involved cooperation with Mexico's government. Joint action was not unprecedented. U.S. agencies had previously worked closely with Mexican forces in operations against traffickers. In this scenario, drones might have been used with Mexico's approval, making the campaign appear as a coordinated strike against organized crime. The second, far more controversial option was unilateral action. This would mean launching strikes without Mexico's knowledge or consent. For some officials, that idea was considered an option of last resort, but it was not ruled out. Such a move would almost certainly spark a diplomatic crisis, raising accusations of violating Mexican sovereignty. At the time, it remained unclear whether U.S. officials had formally pitched the drone strike idea to Mexico. But what made these talks remarkable was their scope. Sources suggested the campaign, if carried out, could involve an unprecedented number of U.S. personnel and would represent the first time American drones were deliberately used to bomb cartel networks. While the strike plans remained unsettled, the U.S. military and the CIA did take tangible steps. Surveillance flights over Mexican territory increased significantly. These missions, approved by Mexico, were designed to gather intelligence and build what insiders called a target deck, a detailed list of possible strike points. That list could have included cartel leaders, armed convoys, storage depots, or even financial hubs used to sustain their operations. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum later confirmed that surveillance activity was underway, but stressed that coordination did not equal submission. Mexico collaborates, but it does not subordinate itself, she told reporters. Once word of the drone strike discussions reached the public, Sheinbaum addressed the issue directly. Speaking at a news conference, she made it clear that Mexico would not support such actions. In her words, military intervention was not the answer to organized crime. The real solution, she argued, was tackling the deeper causes, poverty, corruption, and impunity, while strengthening intelligence-driven policing and lawful arrests. Her response reflected Mexico's long-standing position. Cooperation with the United States on security matters is welcome, but foreign intervention on Mexican soil is unacceptable. The idea of drone strikes on Mexican soil highlights how blurred the line has become between fighting terrorism abroad and tackling organized crime closer to home. For Washington, drug cartels present a growing national security problem as synthetic opioids devastate American communities. For Mexico, however, sovereignty and self-determination remain non-negotiable. With tensions between Nicolas Maduro's government in Venezuela and Washington rising, a sharper question now hangs in the air. What would be the true purpose of sending U.S. armed forces to strike a cartel leader, a drug lab, or any foreign criminal network? Would the mission be to defeat organized crime across an entire nation, or to narrowly dismantle one group Washington labeled as a terrorist organization? As expected, the standoff between the two nations has only deepened. On August 7th, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi offered a $50 million reward for information leading to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's arrest. Since 2020, Maduro has faced U.S. drug trafficking charges, with Bondi calling him one of the world's most powerful traffickers and a threat to U.S. security. Caracas rejected the claims, but within hours, 4,000 U.S. troops were sent to the Caribbean. Soon after, more ships, submarines, and aircraft joined. The sudden escalation shocked many, especially since it followed a prisoner swap and renewed Venezuelan oil exports, exposing deep divisions within the White House over how to handle Maduro. Shortly after the U.S. lethal strike on the cartel boat, Maduro announced that all communication channels with Washington were severed, accusing the United States of threats, bombings, and outright blackmail. He singled out U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, for allegedly promoting war and death. Venezuela's Ministry of Foreign Affairs escalated the dispute further, claiming an American warship had boarded and detained one of its fishing vessels inside the country's exclusive economic zone for 8 hours. The exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, extends up to 200 nautical miles, about 370 kilometers from a nation's coast. While foreign vessels are allowed passage, occupying a ship engaged in economic activity is rare and highly provocative, especially in such a politically charged climate. Even if Washington's goal were limited to dismantling a single organization, history suggests the outcome would fall short. Removing leaders or destroying one network has rarely slowed the drug trade. Organized crime in Latin America has proved resilient, with new cartels often more violent than their predecessors stepping into the vacuum. A fentanyl lab in Mexico, for example, can be rebuilt for around $60,000, the price of a new Tesla. As long as corrupt officials share in the profits, the trade flows on uninterrupted. There is no doubt that the U.S. military has the firepower to shatter criminal groups, level drug complexes, and capture infamous kingpins. Yet such victories amount to little when the deeper structures of organized crime remain untouched. As many analysts and officers note, military triumphs may bring a fleeting sense of success, but they rarely alter the underlying dynamics. Medellin offers a stark example. Over the decades, its residents have lived under shifting groups: the Medellin Cartel, La Terraza, the Gulf Clan, and others. The names keep changing, but the criminal grip endures. The lesson is simple. Bombs and bullets cannot erase organized crime. Attempts to fight cartels as though they were insurgents or terrorists risk serious failure. Politicians may talk about defeating the Sinaloa cartel or Venezuela's Tren de Aragua with the same military strategies once used against ISIS or the FARC. But this comparison is misleading. Insurgent groups pursue political power, cartels seek profit. While guerrillas often relied solely on violence, criminal groups mix violence with bribery. The Latin American phrase plata o plomo, silver or lead, captures this dual strategy. Cartels bribe officials when possible, and when money fails, they turn to bullets. This makes them harder to confront than insurgents, because they seep into the legal economy, law enforcement, politics, and even financial systems. Removing a cartel boss may shake the hierarchy, but the web of corruption remains, ready to support the next successor. Fighting organized crime is not a task for soldiers. It is a mission for investigators, prosecutors, and judges, people who can tackle corruption, trace money, and enforce the rule of law. History shows that even the biggest drug lords, from Pablo Escobar to Chapo Guzman, eventually fall, often with U.S. help. But their downfall never disrupts the global market that sustains the trade. Cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl continue to flow, often cheaper and purer than before. A half-century of crackdowns has failed to dent the supply, and fentanyl's dangers only grow as it mixes with other chemicals like xylazine. Relying on the military may produce flashy headlines, but it cannot deliver lasting results. Worse, it risks deep diplomatic damage. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, made this clear when she firmly rejected the idea of U.S. intervention. "We cooperate, we collaborate, but there will be no invasion," she said. Military strikes on Mexican soil without consent would shatter trust, poison bilateral relations, and cripple cooperation in other vital areas such as migration. If civilians were killed in such operations, the harm to U.S. credibility would be incalculable. The truth is unavoidable. Military force might topple individual groups, but it cannot dismantle the intricate, corruption-fueled networks that allow organized crime to thrive. That work requires patience, oversight, and a commitment to lawful institutions, not bombs in foreign skies. Mexican cartels have crossed a line. After years of smuggling, violence, and brazen attacks, one bold move has drawn America's full attention. Elite military units, armed drones, and advanced surveillance systems are now tracking every step of the cartel's operation. This isn't a warning, it's the start of a crackdown that could dismantle entire networks. The question is, can the cartels survive this level of pressure? How far will U.S. forces go to stop them? Join us as we uncover how America is striking back against the cartel's most daring moves yet. On October 17, 2019, Mexican Special Forces launched a targeted operation in Culiacan's affluent Tres Rios district to apprehend Ovidio Guzman, the son of the infamous drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. The elite GAF unit, skilled in precision tactical strikes, swiftly breached the safe house, subduing guards and detaining Ovidio within minutes. This operation represented a significant opportunity to weaken the Sinaloa cartel by removing one of its emerging leaders. However, the situation rapidly escalated beyond expectations. As the special forces secured their target, encrypted communications activated a rapid mobilization of cartel operatives. Within half an hour, over 700 armed sicarios flooded the streets of Culiacan, equipped with heavy weaponry, including .50 caliber machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and improvised armored vehicles designed to withstand sustained fire. This was a highly coordinated force, executing tactical maneuvers with military-grade precision. The cartel quickly established roadblocks using burning buses, effectively severing major transport routes. Intense gunfire erupted from elevated positions, while thick smoke darkened the skyline, transforming the city into a chaotic war zone. What began as a targeted arrest evolved into a prolonged 7-hour urban battle, paralyzing Culiacan. The cartel's counteroffensive was methodical and relentless. Armored trucks rammed police vehicles, hindering reinforcements, while well-coordinated assaults overwhelmed military checkpoints with concentrated gunfire and explosives. Civilians sought shelter or fled, leaving deserted streets clogged with abandoned cars. Reports highlighted the cartel's extensive network of informants and lookouts embedded within the city, enabling rapid tactical responses and effectively outmaneuvering government forces. By late afternoon, the Special Forces team holding Ovidio was encircled within the safe house, trapped by an overwhelming cartel presence. The government's operation had collapsed, with mounting risks making continued resistance untenable. The battle in Culiacan revealed a shocking reality. The Sinaloa cartel had evolved into a well-armed, disciplined paramilitary entity capable of challenging state authority in urban warfare. This violent encounter, later known as the Culiacanazo, shocked experts and citizens worldwide. The cartel's rapid deployment of hundreds of armed fighters within an hour revealed an organizational capacity comparable to a small military force. Intelligence reports estimated that the Sinaloa cartel mobilized over 150 vehicles, coordinating attacks across multiple neighborhoods to overwhelm the city's defenses. As the battle dragged on, Mexico's leadership faced a dire predicament. The Special Forces team holding Ovidio Guzman became increasingly isolated, with limited options for reinforcement or retreat. The government's response would soon reveal the fragile balance between maintaining order and preserving lives. In a decisive and controversial move, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador ordered the release of Ovidio Guzman just hours after his capture. This decision came amid escalating threats from the cartel, which had seized at least 8 soldiers hostage, stormed military housing compounds, and vowed to execute captives if their leader was not freed. The Sinaloa cartel's tactics were both bold and calculated. By surrounding army barracks and erecting roadblocks with burning vehicles, they effectively immobilized security forces and leveraged hostages as bargaining chips. Authorities, overwhelmed and facing the prospect of widespread bloodshed, conceded to the cartel's demands. Public outrage intensified as images circulated of burning streets and frightened residents, with many questioning how a single criminal organization could effectively hold an entire city hostage. Internationally, the incident drew intense criticism, particularly from the United States. American officials, alarmed by the ongoing influx of fentanyl and methamphetamine across the border, viewed the release as a failure of Mexico's commitment to combating organized crime. According to 2021 DEA data, the Sinaloa cartel was responsible for 98% of fentanyl entering the U.S., a drug linked to thousands of overdose deaths. The Culiacanazo intensified demands for stronger bilateral cooperation, with U.S. lawmakers advocating for sanctions and joint security operations. The surrender revealed critical weaknesses in Mexico's security framework. It demonstrated how a heavily armed cartel could exploit government reluctance to escalate violence. Although the decision to free Ovidio Guzman saved lives in the short term, it established a troubling precedent, raising questions about how a single figure could exert such influence over national security. Alongside his brothers known as Los Chapitos, he took control of the organization following their father's 2017 extradition to the United States. Ovidio managed critical aspects such as finance, logistics, and technological innovation. He oversaw millions of dollars in drug proceeds, carefully routing funds through complex networks of hidden accounts and trusted couriers. His supervision ensured that cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl moved efficiently across international borders. By 1929, at just 28 years old, Ovidio had become a vital pillar of the cartel's power structure. His integration of modern technology with ruthless operational tactics distinguished him as a new generation of cartel leadership. Technology was a key advantage for Ovidio. He equipped the cartel with phantom secure phones, encrypted communication devices designed to evade detection by law enforcement and rival groups. These modified phones allowed secure coordination of shipments and tactical maneuvers. Additionally, the cartel operated private radio networks on secure frequencies, adding a further layer of protection. During the 1919 Culiacanazo, these systems enabled sicarios to jam government communications, severely disrupting military command and control. Ovidio also championed digital tools such as encrypted applications to monitor drug routes and manage financial transactions. This technological edge turned the cartel into a sophisticated criminal enterprise capable of outmaneuvering surveillance efforts. Beyond technological innovation, Ovidio built a disciplined fighting force. He recruited young men from Sinaloa's poorest communities, offering financial incentives and status. These recruits, often teenagers or in their early 20s, received training to operate advanced weaponry, including assault rifles and grenade launchers, forming an effective paramilitary unit under his command. Unlike the violent street gangs of previous decades, Ovidio Guzman's sicarios operated with discipline and organization, structured into units capable of executing coordinated and complex assaults. In Culiacan, their rapid deployment demonstrated a level of military precision rarely seen in criminal groups. Equipped with modern weapons and supported by an extensive network of informants, these fighters provided the cartel with the strength to confront Mexican military forces directly. His financial operations laundered profits through small businesses and cash transfers, obscuring the cartel's true wealth. In many Sinaloa communities, the cartel was perceived as a provider of employment and security, filling governance voids left by an ineffective state. This local support complicated intelligence gathering, as residents often regarded Ovidio's group as a necessary authority. His blend of criminal power and community influence created a quasi-governmental presence that directly challenged Mexico's sovereignty. Ovidio's rise attracted intense attention from U.S. law enforcement due to his pivotal role in trafficking fentanyl, a drug linked to over 80,000 overdose deaths in 2021, according to DEA reports. His operational scale and technological sophistication elevated him to a high-value target. As pressure intensified from across the border, authorities recognized that capturing Ovidio would require sustained, coordinated efforts beyond a single raid. The United States is prepared to push Mexico for a more assertive response, setting the stage for a new phase in the battle against the Sinaloa cartel. When Andrés Manuel López Obrador assumed Mexico's presidency in 2018, he introduced a policy shift aimed at reducing violence through social initiatives rather than military confrontation. His hugs not bullets approach, abrazos no balazos, focused on addressing the root causes of crime by offering education, jobs, and community programs to vulnerable populations. Previous administrations had relied heavily on aggressive military raids and mass arrests, often resulting in bloody confrontations and significant civilian casualties. López Obrador argued that entrenched poverty and a lack of economic opportunity drove many young people into the arms of criminal organizations. His government invested heavily in social programs aimed at youth training and rural development, with the hope of shrinking the cartel's recruitment base. By 2019, initiatives such as Youth Building the Future provided stipends and job training to vulnerable young adults, offering alternatives to the quick but dangerous income promised by groups like the Sinaloa cartel. However, the absence of sustained military pressure created a security vacuum that cartels exploited. While well-intentioned, this strategy inadvertently allowed the Sinaloa cartel, under Ovidio Guzman, to strengthen its control over key territories, expand smuggling routes, and enhance its military capabilities. The events of October 17, 2019, in Culiacan exposed the limitations of the president's approach. Analysts argued that while the social reform goals were commendable, they failed to address the immediate and growing threat posed by powerful organizations like the Sinaloa cartel. Recognizing the sophistication of Ovidio Guzman's network and the discipline of his armed forces, the United States finally stepped in, determined to prevent a repeat of the 2019 debacle. However, Ovidio's confidence proved misplaced. On January 5, 2023, authorities arrested Guzman Lopez in Culiacan's Jesus Maria district. This operation, known as Operation Mongoose Azteca, was the result of extensive intelligence sharing and coordination between Mexican and U.S. military forces. For months, U.S. intelligence intercepted cartel communications, enabling Mexican authorities to track Ovidio's movements with precision. Eyewitnesses reported that Guzman had attended a family gathering the night before his capture. In a pre-dawn raid, a combined force deployed helicopters and a convoy of ground vehicles to breach his residence. Within 10 hours, Guzman Lopez was in custody. Defense Secretary Luis Crescencio Sandoval later confirmed the arrest, stating that personnel from the Mexican Army, National Guard, Secretariat of National Defense, and Navy participated in the operation. After the successful capture, Guzman was transported securely to Mexico City, where he was presented before the Attorney General's office specializing in organized crime. Later that same day, the Mexican Air Force flew Guzman to the Federal Social Readaptation Center, No. 1, known as Altiplano, a maximum security prison in Almoloya de Juarez. The operation also led to the detention of 17 suspected cartel members. In a subsequent press briefing, Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard confirmed an existing extradition request from the United States. He noted, however, that Guzman faced multiple criminal charges within Mexico. A federal judge ordered a 60-day preventive detention to allow U.S. authorities to formally petition for extradition. Following the arrest, unrest erupted across Sinaloa and neighboring Sonora. The U.S. consulate in Hermosillo reported gunfire, roadblocks, and fires in Culiacan, Los Mochis, and Guasave. The Department of State issued its highest travel advisory warning against travel to the region. Sinaloa Governor Ruben Rocha Moya urged residents to shelter in place amid escalating violence. The turmoil forced the closure of Culiacan International Airport after gunfire struck two planes, a commercial Aeromexico flight and a military aircraft. Shootouts were reported directly on the runway. Aeromexico diverted additional flights away from the international airports in Los Mochis and Mazatlan. Similar attacks on trucks along Highway 15 in Sonora led the airline to cancel flights at Ciudad Obregón International Airport. Normal airport operations resumed by the morning of January 6th. Reports of looting surfaced in parts of Culiacan, while numerous businesses and banks temporarily closed statewide. Journalists covering the unrest documented multiple carjackings, with armed groups demanding vehicle keys from drivers. During the unrest, violence claimed the lives of 10 soldiers, 19 cartel members, and 1 police officer. Among the fallen was an infantry colonel and his 4 escorts, who were ambushed and killed by cartel operatives in Escuinapa, Sinaloa. According to a report from Mexico's Secretariat of National Defense, the operation deployed approximately 3,586 soldiers. The military seized significant weaponry and equipment, including 4.50 caliber Barrett rifles, 6.50 caliber machine guns, 26 long guns, 2 handguns, multiple magazines and cartridges, tactical gear, and 13 operational vehicles. Following Guzman Lopez's capture, the U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control imposed sanctions under Executive Order 14059 targeting individuals and companies within the Sinaloa cartel's supply network. These sanctions focused on entities involved in providing precursor chemicals essential for the large-scale production of methamphetamine and fentanyl in so-called super laboratories, defined by OFAC as facilities producing 10 or more pounds of illicit drugs per production cycle. Notably, Luis Gerardo Flores Madrid, identified as a subordinate of Guzman Lopez, was among those sanctioned. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken described these sanctions as part of a comprehensive government effort aimed at disrupting and dismantling transnational criminal organizations that facilitate the illicit trafficking of fentanyl and other narcotics. By February 28, 2023, reports from CBS News, Agence France Presse, and Reuters cited unnamed Mexican government sources confirming that the United States had formally requested Guzman Lopez's extradition. 7 months later, Mexico extradited Guzman Lopez to the United States to face drug trafficking charges. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland described the extradition as the latest milestone in the Justice Department's campaign to dismantle all facets of the cartel's operations. On July 23, 2024, just 2 days before the arrests of Ismael El Mayo Zambada and Ovidio's brother Joaquin Guzman Lopez, Bureau of Prisons records indicated Guzman Lopez had been released. However, the Department of Justice confirmed he remained in custody. During a hearing on October 21st, it was revealed that Guzman and his brother were negotiating plea agreements and would share legal representation. Their next court appearance was scheduled for January 7, 2025. In May, 17 family members of the brothers were escorted into the United States under American authorities' supervision. On July 11th, Ovidio Guzman pleaded guilty in Chicago's Dirksen Federal Building to 2 counts of drug distribution and 2 counts of participating in a continuing criminal enterprise. Sentencing details remain confidential as Guzman is cooperating with U.S. officials, providing information in hopes of avoiding a life sentence. Meanwhile, the Mexican government, under President Claudia Sheinbaum, criticized the lack of coordination between the 2 countries, arguing that the arrests of Ovidio's brother and Zambada had sparked internal conflicts among criminal factions. Jeffrey Lichtman, Ovidio's attorney, referenced the 2021 release of General Salvador Cienfuegos, an ex-official accused of protecting organized crime, who was extradited to Mexico at its request and later cleared of charges, highlighting the complexities of Mexico-U.S. cooperation in the drug war. After years of relentless cartel smuggling and seeing just how powerful the cartels are becoming, the United States formally designated 8 major Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations in early 2025. This move unlocked new counterterrorism authorities for the U.S. military, particularly the Navy and Air Force, and signaled a shift toward treating cartel operations as a direct national security threat. Around the same period, Mexico's Senate approved a joint training mission pairing the U.S. Army's 7th Special Forces Group with Mexico's elite Naval Marine Corps. While officially described as a cooperative initiative, multiple defense officials confirmed that coordination between the two militaries had already been quietly intensifying months earlier. Since then, U.S. and Mexican agencies have acknowledged at least 18 joint or U.S.-only surveillance flights deep into Mexican territory. Among the platforms deployed, none has drawn more attention than the MQ-9 Reaper, America's primary armed reconnaissance drone. Capable of carrying Hellfire missiles and the infamous non-explosive Ninja bomb, the Reaper can loiter for up to 40 hours, track targets with laser precision, and even read a license plate from miles away. Under expanded intelligence sharing agreements, the DEA now has limited access to CIA-operated drones to locate hidden drug labs in remote mountains and jungles. These missions began under the previous U.S. administration, but have sharply increased in frequency and scope. The operational push isn't confined to the air. By spring 2025, approximately 2,000 U.S. military personnel, including over 140 intelligence specialists from the CIA, NSA, and military intelligence units, had been deployed along the southern border. Naval power has been brought into the mix as well. The USS Gravely, a destroyer armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, now patrols the Gulf Coast to support Border Patrol and the Coast Guard. On land, border infrastructure has been upgraded with 30-foot steel bollard barriers, anti-climb designs, and integrated motion sensors and cameras feeding real-time alerts to the Air National Guard. Airmen and drones respond instantly to sensor triggers, giving law enforcement precise intercept capability. This blend of human presence and technology has cut daily illegal border crossings dramatically compared to previous years, with significant disruptions to cartel smuggling routes. The aerial surveillance fleet has also expanded beyond the Reaper. The legendary U-2 spy plane, still unmatched at 70,000 feet, is mapping cartel compounds and smuggling corridors with ultra-long-range cameras. The Navy's P-8 Poseidon, designed for maritime patrols, now sweeps the Baja Peninsula and Pacific routes favored for cocaine and fentanyl shipments. The RC-135 Rivet Joint, packed with signal intelligence gear, is intercepting cartel communications, pinpointing leadership hideouts, and feeding location data into joint targeting databases. Behind closed doors, U.S. defense planners have debated a controversial next step: direct precision strikes against high-value cartel targets inside Mexico. Proposed missions would involve drones, bombers, and special forces to destroy drug labs, warehouses, and command centers. While Mexico's government has been briefed, officials in both countries admit the discussions are tense, with Washington signaling it could act unilaterally if diplomatic agreements stall. The Pentagon has already positioned one of its most feared strategic assets, the B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, for potential contingency missions. Invisible to most radar, capable of flying thousands of miles without refueling, and able to deliver up to 40,000 pounds of precision munitions, the B-2 offers unmatched reach and surprise. If deployed, it could penetrate deep into cartel strongholds, destroy fortified underground bunkers, and vanish before any response is possible. Its integration with Navy E-2D Hawkeye radar aircraft, satellite feeds, and the Link 16 tactical network ensures real-time situational awareness during missions. And with bunker-busting JDAMS in its arsenal, the bomber could neutralize even the most hardened narco facilities. For now, these capabilities remain in the planning and deterrence phase. But U.S. military and intelligence officials stress that if cartel violence escalates further, or if another Culiacan-scale siege occurs, Washington is prepared to bring the full weight of its counterterrorism arsenal to bear, marking a new and dangerous chapter in the U.S.-Mexico drug war. A weapon built to stop smugglers has finally hit the seas. The United States Navy is testing a thermobaric vacuum bomb to disable fast, drug-running boats, a move that could reshape maritime counter-drug operations while raising urgent legal and civilian risk questions. Could this vacuum bomb change the fight against drug boats forever? Or will it spark even more controversy on the high seas? Join us as we unveil the capabilities of the new vacuum bomb that the United States just tested. The United States has taken the fight against narcotics to a whole new level. Tensions boiled over recently when the U.S. military struck a vessel it claimed belonged to Venezuelan drug traffickers heading toward American shores. But that was just the beginning. The president also announced a second strike in international waters, reporting multiple casualties among the smugglers. Authorities mentioned that the video captured large amounts of narcotics floating in the water after the blast, while a short clip showed the boat erupting in flames. These strikes are part of a broader U.S. push to disrupt maritime drug routes. Following earlier patrols and the deployment of warships to the southern Caribbean, authorities have increasingly relied on targeted strikes to stop the flow of fentanyl and cocaine. A prior operation that killed 11 people drew firm support from some lawmakers who argued that neutralizing suspect vessels was necessary to protect U.S. security. But as expected, Caracas reacted with outrage, turning the focus from drugs to diplomacy. The Venezuelan president denounced the attacks as aggression and vowed to defend national sovereignty, warning that U.S. actions had pushed relations from tense to broken. In a provocative display, Venezuelan warplanes flew near a U.S. destroyer, illustrating the very real risk of miscalculation at sea. American officials responded with a stern warning that any aircraft posing a clear threat would be intercepted, raising the specter of a dangerous standoff. Inside Washington, the administration framed the strikes as carefully targeted and supported by intelligence. The president insisted there was recorded evidence of drug cargo floating in the ocean after the blast, and argued that recent naval actions had reduced maritime trafficking. But he also acknowledged that drugs continued to cross the border by land and said the United States would press its campaign on multiple fronts. Not everyone accepted the strikes at face value. Legal scholars noted that using deadly force in international waters raises complex questions under maritime and human rights law. They warned that attacks on vessels without the clear consent of the flag state could violate international norms and create a precedent fraught with legal risk. Observers pointed out that confirming drug carriage and ensuring civilian safety are difficult at sea. Misidentifying a target or causing collateral civilian harm could produce severe diplomatic blowback. The debate spilled into public statements. Some U.S. politicians defended the action as justified against narco-terrorists, urging more aggressive measures to stop smuggling networks. Others urged caution, stressing the need for solid evidence and for preserving international law. In Mexico and Latin America more broadly, officials and analysts warned that unilateral use of force in sovereign waters would damage cooperation on migration, security, and trade. The Venezuelan government vowed to reject any foreign military intervention. Its leader framed the U.S. actions as open hostility, saying Caracas would fully exercise the right to defend its territory. That posture proved the diplomatic cost of forceful anti-drug tactics. Even if they disrupt specific shipments, they risk severing the very cooperation needed for long-term solutions. For now, both sides signaled readiness to press their positions. The U.S. emphasized a law enforcement rationale tied to border security. Venezuela framed the strikes as an attack on national sovereignty. Meanwhile, analysts warned that maritime strikes, even if tactically effective in the short term, could widen regional tensions and complicate options for coordinated anti-narcotics work. That debate soon shifted from politics to hardware, especially after reports that the Navy finally tested a new vacuum bomb system for disabling drug-running boats, sharpening attention on the weapons being used at sea. But before we get into its details, let's take a look at the bunker buster penetrator that has put fear in the hearts of many for years. One such munition worth noting is the BLU-116B, an air-delivered penetrator built to defeat deeply buried, reinforced targets. It is an air-delivered penetrator born from a decades-long push to defeat deeply buried and reinforced targets. Designed as a refined successor to earlier penetrating warheads, it was developed to punch through concrete and soil where standard general-purpose bombs could not, and to do so when fitted to a range of guidance kits or carried as a simple, unguided store. The program was driven primarily by the U.S. Air Force, with the Navy also involved in development work. Early design work in the mid to late 1990s produced what was initially called the Dense Metal Case Penetrating Warhead, later renamed the Advanced Unitary Penetrator and officially designated BLU-116/B. Lockheed Martin led the design contract awarded in the mid-90s, while Elwood National Forge emerged as the prime production contractor. The Naval Air Warfare Center at China Lake contributed engineering and testing support during development and into production. Several industry specialists supplied key subsystems, including advanced fuse and integration kits from major defense firms. Physically, the BLU-116B follows the slender, dart-like form of modern penetrator bombs. It is similar in external size to the BLU-109 family, but optimized for greater penetration. Its weight is close to 2,000 pounds and it carries a dense explosive fill. Open-source technical summaries suggest roughly 100 kilograms of PBXN, or similar high explosive, inside the hardened body. In tests, the munition demonstrated the ability to perforate many meters of reinforced concrete, a clear improvement over predecessors, and open-source reporting has rated its penetration capability as at least double that of the BLU-109 in comparable tests. A key innovation is the so-called elevator fuse concept. The bomb uses a programmable hard-target fuse that senses the weapon's passage through layers of material and times the detonation at the optimal depth to maximize internal damage. Contracts for the smart fuse were awarded to specialized manufacturers, reflecting the critical role of timing in defeating buried structures. BLU-116/B has been integrated with common precision guidance kits, allowing it to be employed as a guided munition in the GBU-24 family or adapted to JDAM and other standoff delivery systems. Serial production entered service in the late 1990s after dynamic sled and drop testing, and small quantities reportedly moved into operational inventories. Unconfirmed reports suggest the weapon may have been employed in limited operational trials in the Balkans and possibly in Afghanistan, though the Department of Defense has not publicly acknowledged combat USE. Production progressed through the following decade. By the end of 2011, industry estimates placed total output in the low thousands. Forecasts prepared at that time assumed continued modest annual production to sustain inventories and support retrofit programs for cruise missile and glide munition fleets. The BLU-116B program reflects a broader strategic concern that emerged in the 80s and 90s. Adversaries were increasingly building hardened, buried, or redundant facilities that older bombs could not defeat. The Air Force's accelerated development efforts aimed to give strike planners a tailored, repeatable solution for those targets without resorting to nuclear options or massive bomber packages. From a logistics and acquisition angle, the program involved multiple primes and subcontractors. Metal case fabrication and final assembly were handled by specialized foundries and manufacturing houses, while vendors supplied fuses, guidance and integration kits, and quality testing. That industrial base allowed for both a tailored weapon and the option to retrofit the design to multiple delivery platforms, including tactical aircraft and cruise missiles. Looking ahead at the time of the report, planners expected the BLU-116B to supplement existing penetrators and to remain a component of conventional deep strike arsenals. The munition's combination of a hardened casing, programmable fuse, and compatibility with precision guidance made it attractive for missions requiring surgical defeat of buried command nodes, underground storage, and reinforced structures. Although many technical details remain restricted, the public record makes clear that the BLU-116B represents an incremental but important step in conventional penetrator design, a weapon built to reach what older bombs could not. While it advances conventional penetrator design to reach hardened, buried targets, a very different class of weapons pursues its effect by other means: thermobaric munitions. The U.S. thermobaric warheads, the BLU-121B, a later 2,000-pound thermobaric penetrator concept, and the better-known BLU-118/B, are both notorious for their devastating effects. These thermobaric weapons began as a crude but deadly idea and slowly evolved into one of the most forceful blast technologies on the battlefield. Their roots trace back to the German Army in World War II, which experimented with multi-barrel rocket launchers loaded partly with fuel gas. The early method was simple. Several rockets scattered a flammable cloud, and a final round ignited it. That crude sequence produced a large, sustained blast over a wide area. After those early attempts, development paused until renewed interest in the mid-1960s. During the Vietnam War, American forces adapted fuel-air concepts into aircraft-delivered weapons. Around the same time and later, the Soviet Union and Russia developed their own family of thermobaric munitions. Unlike Western practice that often kept the weapons air-delivered, Russian designs expanded into many sizes, from heavy aerial bombs down to rocket warheads and even infantry-scale rounds. Recent conflicts, including fighting in Afghanistan and Chechnya, showed these weapons in action and pushed further refinement. The United States developed its own family of fuel-air and enhanced blast weapons over decades. Early heavy examples include the BLU-82, a truck-deployed high-blast bomb that used a jellied explosive slurry to clear minefields and blast obstacles. That weapon produced enormous overpressure and was used to shape battlefields by removing obstacles and denying enemy positions. More modern American thermobaric designs include precision glide and penetrating warheads equipped with thermobaric fills, and even adaptations for air-to-surface missiles. Combat experience in recent conflicts has pushed innovation in both camps. In Afghanistan and other theaters, Western forces deployed a newer generation of thermobaric warheads combined with guidance kits, enabling a large penetrating bomb to trade pure blast for selective, targeted destruction inside hardened structures. In some cases, lighter thermobaric warheads were integrated into missile systems to give helicopters and unmanned platforms a way to defeat enclosed targets without relying solely on kinetic penetration. In practice, the diversity of delivery options matters. A shoulder-fired thermobaric round can clear a room or cave entrance. A vehicle or helicopter-launched rocket can neutralize an enemy strongpoint. Multiple launch rocket systems and airdrop fuel-air bombs create area denial effects across entire districts. Commanders choose the tool based on range, target type, and desired effects, whether to collapse a bunker, to suffocate an enclosed force with heat and overpressure, or to create a sustained blast that destroys light fortifications. That range of capability raises tactical and ethical issues. Thermobaric munitions are optimized for enclosed and semi-enclosed spaces, where their prolonged pressure and intense heat are most deadly. They are highly effective against fortifications and armored vehicle bays, but create complex casualty and collateral risk profiles in urban areas. For planners and medics, this reality demands careful targeting, precise intelligence, and robust rules of engagement to limit civilian harm while achieving military objectives. Across battlefields, the lesson is clear. Thermobaric weapons are no longer exotic, strategic tools reserved for rare USE. They are integrated into squad kits, vehicle arsenals, rocket brigades, and air forces, giving military planners a layered set of options to prosecute targets from close range to standoff distances. That integration changes how fights are fought and how forces must prepare to counter and mitigate the devastating effects these weapons deliver. What sets thermobaric munitions apart is how they generate their destructive power. Instead of a single solid charge that explodes instantly, a thermobaric device first disperses a cloud of fuel, a vapor, fine droplets, or powdered compound into the target space. That cloud spreads into corners, gaps, and rooms. It seeps into bunkers, vehicles, and building interiors. When the fuel-air mix is ignited, it burns as a sweeping, high-temperature plasma, producing both intense heat and a prolonged pressure wave. Reported fuel ingredients range from industrial chemicals and oxidizers to highly energetic powders. Whatever the mixture, The fireball from a full detonation can reach temperatures in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 degrees Celsius. More important than peak heat is the blast dwell time. The pressure pulse lasts longer than that from a conventional charge. That longer overpressure subjects structures and people to repeated stress as the wave reflects inside confined spaces. In tight rooms or inside vehicle compartments, the effect can be catastrophic. Instead of relying only on a compact charge, these munitions disperse a flammable aerosol into the target area and then detonate it. The result is a broad, high-temperature fireball combined with a strong overpressure wave that can do more damage over a larger space than a similar weight of conventional explosive. For clinicians and combat medics, the most important consequence is primary blast injury. This term describes damage resulting directly from the pressure wave itself, not from shrapnel or impact. Organs that sit at boundaries between tissues of different density, air-filled lungs, hollow bowel loops, and the delicate structures of the inner ear are especially vulnerable. The pressure pulse can tear airways, rupture lung tissue, perforate bowel, and fracture tiny bones in the ear. Effects may be immediate and dramatic, or subtle at first and worsen over hours. The severity and pattern of injury depend on distance from the detonation, the victim's orientation relative to the blast, and whether they were in an open space or a confined room. Confined areas amplify the thermal and pressure effects. A thermobaric detonation in a building is therefore far more dangerous than the same munition detonated in open terrain. Medical teams should suspect serious internal injury when a patient presents after exposure, even if external wounds are minimal. The lungs are the most vulnerable to a blast wave. When it hits, the stress wave travels through the chest, damaging soft tissues, lobes of the lungs, and the small air sacs known as alveoli. These can rupture, leaking fluid and leading to what doctors call blast lung. In severe cases, this can fill the lungs completely, causing suffocation. Other complications include air bubbles in the bloodstream or air embolism, collapsed lungs or pneumothorax, or blood around the lungs or hemothorax. One of the dangerous aspects is that breathing problems may not appear immediately. In some cases, symptoms show up only hours or even 2 days later. Doctors monitor patients by listening to the lungs, checking oxygen levels, and using chest scans. Treatments include oxygen therapy, blood tests, and chest tubes if air or blood has collected around the lungs. The heart and blood vessels are also at risk. Air bubbles can enter the heart or arteries, disrupting blood flow and damaging the heart muscle. Studies on blast-exposed animals have shown bleeding in the heart tissue after exposure. Doctors look for signs like unusual heart sounds, bruises along blood vessels, or changes in heart rhythm. While there is no single cure, treatment focuses on careful monitoring and managing symptoms before they worsen. Blast pressure often damages hearing. In mild cases, the eardrum may rupture, causing pain and temporary hearing loss. In more serious cases, the bones of the middle ear can dislocate, or the inner ear itself can be damaged, leading to permanent deafness, dizziness, and balance problems. Doctors check patients' ears after an explosion to detect hidden injuries. While some ruptures heal naturally, severe cases often require surgery. The stomach and intestines can also be injured because of the gas pockets inside them. Mild injuries may cause bruising, but strong blasts can cause dangerous perforations, especially in weak spots like the iliocacal junction. These holes can leak bowel contents, leading to infections like peritonitis or heavy internal bleeding. Because these symptoms may appear up to 2 weeks after the blast, patients must be monitored closely. Surgery is usually required in severe cases. Perhaps the most serious effect is on the brain and nervous system. A blast wave can push air bubbles into brain arteries, leading to strokes, unconsciousness, or even death. Animal studies have shown air emboli inside the brain after blast exposure. Treatments include hyperbaric oxygen therapy, or, if unavailable, pure oxygen. Doctors also monitor consciousness levels and nerve functions carefully to spot early signs of brain injury. While the rumor has persisted that the United States is secretly testing a thermobaric vacuum bomb, no credible evidence supports the claim. Details of the recent maritime strikes remain tightly controlled, and the Pentagon has not confirmed the use of any such weapon. Still, the dramatic impact of the explosions has fueled speculation. Video clips showing boats erupting into towering fireballs and reports of narcotics scattered across the water seem too powerful for what many would expect from a routine interdiction of drug traffickers. The suggestion that a weapon designed for bunker-busting battlefields might have been used against cartel vessels stretches belief. If such a weapon were truly being tested in the Caribbean, the consequences would be severe. Beyond the immediate destruction, there would be international outrage, accusations of overreach, and questions about whether the U.S. had escalated a drug war into a demonstration of extreme military force. For now, the official narrative emphasizes kinetic strikes aimed at disrupting smuggling networks. That framing aligns with long-standing U.S. counter-narcotics doctrine, not experimental weapons testing. Yet the intensity of the footage, combined with the number of casualties reported, ensures that whispers of something more exotic will not disappear easily. Whether rumor or fact, the perception alone carries weight, fueling tensions with Venezuela and reminding the world that the line between law enforcement and warfare at sea can be dangerously thin. Thanks for watching. Before you go, click the link on your screen to check out another video. See you there.